Well, joining us now is former US Assistant Secretary of Defence, Jim Townsend. Good morning, Jim. Let's discuss the pledges of support for Ukraine first. What hurdles are there remaining for Biden to push that £60 billion support package over the line?
Well, the hurdles all are in the U.S. House of Representatives, and with the Speaker of the House, he keeps treading water, he keeps spinning wheels. It looks like he can't decide whether to risk a big revolution among those extremists in the House or to just kick the can down the road. It's just a miserable state of affairs watching this happen in the House of Representatives.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on. This is the bit that I'd like to ask an American. Trump has made massive noises about how NATO could do more. Biden, I know, wants to support Ukraine. We're all suffering from war fatigue. We've all got cost of living. Certainly over here, I'm always saying that, you know, it is our war, because if Ukraine are defeated, Russia will step further. That's my theory. Other people have other opinions. Trump's language about NATO, does that resonate with the American people? Do they go, yeah, he's right, why should we be paying? Or are they very much into, we should be giving more to Ukraine? Where does the country sit on this debate, my friend?
Well, that kind of language, that harsh language from Trump appeals to his base. His base in the U.S. is about 30% of the Republicans. They're rabid meat eaters, and they love to hear that kind of thing. And they're not even thinking about the implications of what Trump says. They just love the language. But for the rest of the country, the only thing that really resonates is that European allies need to do more. This has been something that's been part of our politics for many years.
So he's got a point,
but right
Trump.
now,
so he's got a point, Trump. That's what I'm saying. There are other parts of America that will think, Europe, you've got to pull your finger out. That's fair enough, right?
Yep, but they don't like the tone, and they don't like the harsh, two-fisted response by Trump, particularly what he said a month or so ago about to the Russians, do whatever you want to do to those allies who don't, quote unquote, pay up. So the bulk of the country says, yeah, Europe's got to do more, but they are also seeing that Europe is doing more, but we've got to drum home that case more and more, because we've got to get the American people realizing that a strong NATO is something we all need, and that we're starting to see that happen because of Putin.
Jim, can I ask, how is David Cameron received in America? Obviously, former Prime Minister, now Foreign Secretary. He comes across, has that meeting with Donald Trump. Over here, certain newspapers saying that he acts more statesman-like than Rishi Sunak. Does that come across? Has it made news in America that Cameron has met with Trump? And if so, how's it been received?
Well, I think it's made news within the Beltway of Washington. The bulk of the country was more taken by the eclipse and what happens in Hollywood, I'm afraid. But within the Beltway of Washington, D.C., where we all watch that kind of thing, I think we think Cameron does come across quite diplomatic. He does have this charismatic way about talking about the issues. I think the press conference came over well. Going down to Mar-a-Lago, you might lose some supporters about Cameron doing that.
I was about to jump in, Jim. I'm not David Cameron's biggest fan. I mean, this is a man who introduced austerity, which is why this country's on its backside. He then stalked out of his job when he lost the referendum about Brexit, right? He makes this comeback despite several dodgy business dealings, allegedly. He described Donald Trump 6 months ago as divisive, stupid and morally wrong and misogynistic. David Cameron can't be taken seriously, and Donald Trump must be sitting in Mar-a-Lago with his bowl of chips going, they're all coming to see me. This plays right into Donald Trump's hands.
Yeah, that's a bit of the problem here. I'm trying to be diplomatic. We love having senior officials from the HMG come to Washington and talk to Blinken, et cetera, et cetera. Going down to Mar-a-Lago was a bit of a surprise, a bit over the top. It's like the saying goes about wrestling with pigs. You wrestle with pigs, nothing happens except you get dirty and the pig gets happy. So in a sense, going down to Mar-a-Lago did raise some eyebrows, but I'm glad he escaped without being scathed down there. But it's not a good look, I think, on the whole.
And Jim, just moving on now to Cameron and the Middle East, he confirmed yesterday, after a month, that arms sales from the UK to Israel will continue, but obviously he still faces that pressure to publish the legal advice that he was given. Let's just take a little look at a clip now of what he said yesterday with regards to Israel.
The latest assessment leaves our position on export licences unchanged. This is consistent with the advice that I and other ministers have received, and as ever, we will keep the position under review. Let me be clear, though, we continue to have grave concerns around the humanitarian access issue in Gaza, both for the period that was assessed and subsequently.
So, Jim, what is the argument for not publishing the legal advice that David Cameron and his office would have received?
Well, you know, I will leave that to you. I know you'd love to have an answer on that, but I'm not about to get into the UK legalistic approaches to arms sales, except to say that in the US we have a similar issue. It's not so much legality as much as it's political. When do you use arms sales as a sanction to pull back on arms sales when there's things happening in Tel Aviv that have gone over the line? And you need to express something more than just something verbal. You've got to actually do something. And so for the United States, there's pressure on Biden as well to halt or to certainly cut back on arms sales. So that's where we are. I know in the UK, there's the review that you mentioned, making it public. What do the lawyers say? But I'm going to leave that up to you. I'm not going to jump into that.
But is there increasing pressure on Biden, you say, in the US, not just from, within Washington, but from the wider general public? You said that people are probably more interested in what's going on in Hollywood. But I just wondered if the similar pressure was coming from the voters.
Yes, absolutely. It's increasing. And for Biden, that's critical because this is his election year.
Isn't it just very quickly, Jim, isn't it actually an opportunity for Biden, actually, in terms of foreign policy, which I think he's been criticised for not really having a foreign policy. Is this not actually a moment where, if he shows some leadership, he's strong with Netanyahu, he's strong towards China about their thoughts of Taiwan, etc., that actually that would garner support for him in the presidential election?
Well, that's what you're beginning to see, because the pressure on Netanyahu from Biden is increasing as Biden is on the phone. There's a lot of work being done behind the scenes by Blinken and others that are really ratcheting up the pressure on Netanyahu. So as that gets more and more public about these phone calls, that is, and they ratchet it up in terms of the publicity as he needs to have a feeling within his campaign that he is doing something strong, that he is doing something about the humanitarian situation. So you are seeing it, but they're ratcheting it up as they need it in terms of the campaign.
Well, thank you so much, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Jim Townsend there, former US Assistant Secretary of Defense.